Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to beautiful tropical nomad in the middle of Bali. We're here to talk about, I don't know. Like you probably read the title. We don't know either. But my name is Sim, like a little tiny SIM card. And I have my friend Kevin here. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Kevin Westrich, here in this beautiful land of Bali. Absolutely.
So we're just here. We're just going to kind of have these discussions and hopefully shed a light on the human condition and just the depths of all the things that we actually don't know, and how we're all searching for meaning and the places that takes you, and there isn't really a specific kind of one focal point that this podcast is going to be about, but just generally hopefully we can share something that'll add value to your life. But to that point, you know, I personally have come here. I was brought to Bali because I went through that. It's kind of what we were talking about before this podcast started. Mm-hmm. That piece about moving towards what was told to me is success. I was taught that this is success. Success is that, you know, get money in the bank, get a house, get a wife, get a car, get all that stuff. Make sure you get a Benz. Make sure you have this many square feet in your house. Yeah. And even as a kid, I remember being like, wait, who came up with these metrics? And then at 30 I came to Bali, and it just hit my soul that there's so much more to this experience we call life, and going deeper into all of those things that most people don't talk about that are considered woo-woo a lot of times. That's what I've been searching for. So, you know, and then I met Kevin, and I was like, there's the guy.
There's woo-woo.
There's woo-woo. That's what I want to talk about. Tell me about the woo, Kevin.
Well, you know, it started for me like you. I did the corporate thing. Yeah. You know, managed large clients around the world, around the country, and what I really found out was I had to do it. I had to buy the house. I had to have the children. I had to have the marriage. I had to have all those things. They were important for my own discovery, my own growth. Yep. But something happened and sort of set me on a different trajectory. And did I really know it was coming? No. Yeah. Because if you'd have told me what I was going to experience, I probably would have said no.
Of course.
I said, this is just too much. Yeah. It's too hard. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But what I found out in '96, when it really started for me, was like I said, I was in the corporate world and had my first, what do you want to call it? I call them now sort of a melt-in, not a meltdown. You know, where you just kind of go inward and something happens. It's some kind of a catalyst, some kind of transformative process that happens, to somebody like you were talking about. Happens to a lot of us. You know, it could be for some midlife crisis, whatever. But I think what's happening now more often is it's happening to a lot of us earlier, because we've come to that agreement. I guess we talk about the soul, which I believe is the animating part of us, that agrees to these things before they come, before we come to this life and into this body, that we want to experience things. And there comes a time that if we're really not in true alignment with what's of our soul's purpose or our purpose and our intention for being here, something happens. Mm-hmm. One of two things. One is you will be sent on a new trajectory. Some people call it spirituality, awakening, many, many different terms that people have. Or you become sort of quasi-dead. Yeah. And you can see it in people's eyes.
Yeah, like dead inside.
They're dead. They just kind of resign from the fact that I'm not going to participate anymore.
That's so sad to see.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. I used to think it was really sad, like you're saying, but I also came to an understanding through a lot of the different experiences that I've had in life now that I never knew was going to happen, was each of us has a journey, okay? And there is every spectrum on this planet. What I mean by spectrum in terms of what we want to experience in this life, okay? Mm-hmm. That soul, that animating part of us. Mm-hmm. And some people, it's to go to a certain point and they're done. They leave the body energetically. Some people call them walk-ins, others come in. That's a whole other conversation. Yep. But that point comes and you make a decision. So.
Yeah, and it's almost like something does have to happen for you to get to that point, because it's too comfortable otherwise. Yeah. It's like, I have a house, I have a car, I have a wife. Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to go on a self-discovery journey with the destination I don't even know that there is a destination, and if you tell me what destination I'll
There
get
really
to,
isn't, but
there really isn't. But if you tell me like what's going to happen to me, I don't want that. It's way easier for me to sit here and watch Netflix, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's something inside you that just screams.
Yeah.
That started happening to me, and I was, I was in Canada. I was finally getting to the point of achieving my 15-year journey of success, and there was something inside me just completely at the top of its spiritual lungs screaming at me. And now I realize it's a soul, guys. It's a soul.
Yeah.
Apparently we have this thing called a soul, and it speaks to you. There's an intuition. It's constantly guiding you in very specific ways. And I spent a lot of my life following that intuition. I wouldn't realize why I was doing certain things, why I would sometimes do things which seemed detrimental to me. And I was like, well, if I would have done that, I would have made more money. Or if I would have just kind of sucked up to that person, this would have happened. But that intuition was constantly guiding me. And when I would listen, it would be great. But whenever I wouldn't, I would have that feeling of like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I call that the dynamic tension. It's the push-pull sort of syndrome that we go through. That, if we're really not following our soul's path, and the soul is just simply, I believe, that energetic connection to creation.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
It's not really about religion. It's really just about spirituality. And by the way, for most people, spirituality is everything. Eating, sleeping, working, walking.
Can you just give us a definition of spirituality? Because like most people think like spirituality is this like hippie floating around, holier than thou, I do yoga and stuff, spirituality. But like, obviously it means different things to different people. But like, what do you see spirituality as? Spirituality
to me has gone through many phases and transitions in my life, and where I've really come to an understanding is it is my heart's calling. What is that internal source? I've been through many, many things in my life, and many transformational moments, through a lot of pain and suffering, that helped me to understand more of a wholeness of why we're here.
Yep.
Is that wholeness. Let's see.
Yeah, can you just sum up spirituality in the next 30 seconds, please?
Yeah, okay. Spirituality is listening to that internal message, that voice, that feeling, that intuition that is truly in alignment with you.
I love that.
That, it's your guiding force. And the beautiful thing is, when I started to understand what was happening, it was as easy as a word, a phrase, a color, something that intuitively pulled me towards it, and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And because I always wanted this roadmap, For most of my life, it's like, can somebody just give me a roadmap how to make this life work?
Exactly.
And I realized the roadmap, you don't need one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trick.
It's just simply stepping into what's in front of you and trusting.
And that roadmap piece is great because we always think like, I just want to know where I'm going and how to get there. But the trick is that like, the less you look for the roadmap, the more the road appears.
Yeah.
And you are where you're supposed to be at all times.
Yeah.
Trying to, because a great quote that I think it was like Alan Watts who said it. He's like, life is not a destination; it's a journey.
Sure.
Right. It's a very common quote that's been quoted all over places. But he said it in this beautiful way that like, if you live life as if it's a destination, you won't reach it. Even when you die, you won't reach it.
Yeah.
But if you live it as a journey, you're always there.
Yeah.
You don't need to get there.
Yeah, and the really important thing is when you're sharing that, is it's each moment. If we become fully present, as Eckhart Tolle and many others have really made really popular in the last 10, 15 years, be in the moment.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean don't do what you need to do. See, there's a difference in terms of doing and being. We're called human beings. We're not called human doers. Okay?
Human doings.
And the difference is it's a very thin line because when we talk about being a human being, that means, okay, what's all the information I have in front of me? What's my intuition say? What does my heart say? And then I make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I have all the information, I have all the feeling, and then I make a decision. Where being a human doer says, oh my God, that's the goal. I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I do that.
Yeah.
And there's all of these beautiful things that we missed along the way. However, don't hear me say that being a human doer doesn't have a purpose and a beauty to it, because if I didn't do that, I couldn't know and understand what I know and understand today. Okay, so it all has a piece to it. And it's the other thing.
Is
I
your
want
mind
to share,
blown yet? Mine's getting there. Okay. So is your mind blown yet? Mine's definitely getting there. But
You
I
know,
have to be the human doer to be the human being. But human beings are the doers. I'm like,
yeah, because the doing comes from a very different place. See,
So are you saying that you have to go through the journey of the doing to realize that being is the point, or do you do them at the same time?
they can be done simultaneously, but for most of us, I think a lot of us who are kind of on this edge, I'm considerably older than you and a lot of the
Are
people
you?
on the journey. Yeah, oh yeah.
When I was your age, trust me.
I'm 63 years old, so,
Jeez.
you know, much older.
Looks like he's 12.
And what I learned along the way, it's a combination of both, okay? Doing and being. And I believe my soul's purpose was to do the corporate thing, to clean carpets, to make donuts, to do all these things as I grew up and got older and matured, and then into the corporate world, as I mentioned, and then eventually leaving that. Because if I didn't have those experiences, how could I know what I know today?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like when I had my near-death experience. I left my body, I went to the other side. I saw things in a very different way after that in life.
Yeah.
And I really realized at that point, you know, just follow what's in your heart, follow what's in your intuition, and then do from that place.
Yeah, and that's why I think everybody needs to almost die.
Yeah, and that's
in a weird way.
and well, that's interesting, because it used to be that, like when I had my near-death experience, did I die as a kind of some huge event? I was in a car accident? No.
Yeah.
I literally had a cigar shop. I left my body. It's a long story.
Yeah.
And when I came back about an hour later, after I came out of the light,
Yeah.
you know, I realized life isn't exactly what I thought it was. It's totally different. So, yeah.
That I feel like is one of those things where once it hits you, it's just that never leaves you.
No,
You know,
can't.
as soon as you've had that revelatory moment, and you're like, wait, what I think of as life is not life. There's so much more to this thing that we don't experience. And so this is where like I've always been a scientific guy and really trying to like, you know, be the scientific man and trying to figure things out and stuff. And science even says like we're completely empty space.
Yeah.
We're 99.9999999% empty space. Like this is all just empty
Yeah.
space.
Yep.
So do I exist? Right? Like, is this even real? Like, am I touching this thing? And I remember one of my science teachers. He was like, this is one he blew my mind with physics. He touched the table and he went, "I'm not touching this." And I was like, "Mr. Wiggly, you better prove to me how you're not touching this." And he's like, "I'm not. Read that chapter in the book." And I'm not. So I went and read the chapter and completely understood it. He's like, "Come at lunch, I'll explain to you the physics of how I'm not touching this." So he explained to me that according to the way we understand science today, is these are just electromagnetic forces, and the sense that I get that I'm touching it is coming from those forces. And then from that point forward, it completely shifted my reality to be like, okay, well, so then I'm not touching anything. But it feels like I'm touching. That doesn't mean I'm touching it. So am I seeing things? Am I hearing things? Am I nuts? I am nuts. Found that out later. That's just how we are.
It's all part of the journey.
Exactly. A little bit of nuts never hurt anybody. Okay, but then as I've kind of dug down deeper and deeper, all that stuff that's said in scriptures and spirituality and all those ascetics and philosophers,
Sure.
it all starts to make sense.
Yeah.
You know?
There's more to this than what we've been told.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you now I think we talked about this. There's a scientist, Nassim Haramein. He came up with the science of how consciousness is at the center of the perception of the universe that we create. Yet nobody actually wants to discuss that part. That like
Sure.
consciousness
Sure.
is the thing. You know, and like that's what I love about Bali, where I've met so many people where like when you have a conscious conversation, they get what you mean by that. Where in the world it's constantly like, oh, consciousness, whatever. You're like, you think you're
It's a new woo-woo thing.
yeah, exactly. No, even the idea of woo-woo.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 30, 40, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, I was, when I left the corporate world in 1996, my parents, all my family and friends in the corporate world literally thought I was nuts. And I told them I was going to Sedona, Arizona, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're going to a cult." I was like, "What?" It's like, I don't even know what that means, but okay. But now, 25 years later, they're just like, "Oh my God, how do I sign up for this?"
Yeah.
Because they've seen me go through these transitions. And don't get me wrong, there have been times in this 25 years that it was extraordinarily painful.
Of course.
And that animating part, that source, that part of me would not allow me to leave this plane, this world, this body, because I came very close many times. And I believe many people on this journey do also come to that point, maybe wanting to commit suicide, wanting to leave the world, let's say the word suicide. But what happens is, I believe there were those of us in the beginning, we had to. It was sort of our contract, as you would say, we would say. And from that point, I believe right now in human history, there are those of us who have walked that journey. And our purpose, our soul's contract, if you want to say, is to help others. Because what took me years, 20 years to accumulate, assimilate, and integrate, I now watch people go through what I went through, and I hold that space with them in a matter of hours and days.
That's
so
insane.
It's much more instantaneous.
It's much more instantaneous, but that is a lot to absorb, and then kind of go away and assimilate into your life. It's completely reality shifting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It is, and it's. You talked about it earlier. You can talk about this stuff as much as you want. It's etheric. It's this. It's that. It is only the moment when you experience it, you truly understand it, and you can integrate it. And ultimately, what I say, it's simply a remembering. Because it's in our DNA.
Yeah, exactly.
Is my belief. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a coincidence that it's been written on the walls of temples, and they built stone monuments to these ideas, and they left it for us, and we just go, that was myth.
Yeah.
That tens of thousands of years of human history where our ancestors, they didn't write how to grow rice. They left, there's oneness. There's something else out there. You are God or power or the universe, whatever, in just different ways. They all said the same thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, you look at indigenous, you look at shamans, people of the land. You know, they've known this stuff for eons, for a long time. And, I mean, look at some of the scriptures, and I don't buy into any one particular belief, religion. I'm omnism. You know, I started off Catholic. I was Native American. Studied the Vedas with my teacher for years. Was a Buddhist for a while. And I came back to a very simple understanding. Is all rivers lead to the same ocean. Doesn't matter what you call it. Source. And you choose the path you want to experience, which is really beautiful. Because what it does, see, that's where all the wars and a lot of the conflict comes from, is when this idea or belief that mine is better than yours.
Of course. And mine is right. Yours is wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, you needed to learn that and to experience it, but hopefully you go beyond it. It's like there are more commonalities, and that's one of the beautiful things about shamanism. And when you do this kind of work, and particularly when you really look at different scriptures, religions, and so forth, there are more similarities than there are differences.
It's almost like it's just different languages verbalizing the exact same concept.
Exactly.
Right? It's uncanny, but then once you understand it, it makes perfect sense. There's no other truth to the world per se. You know, it is that we're all just one. You know, I've had that kind of revelatory experience where I was told, like, you and this ant and this plant are the same thing, and I felt it. And the moment you feel it, you understand, like, you just can't undo that.
You can't.
You go through life understanding, like, me and you, we're the same thing. Just because we experience it like this, that's a bit of a fallacy, right? And the idea of oneness, the idea of wholeness in the universe itself, is so common that it's almost become a cliche. Yet it's one of the fundamental things that we need to understand. That, like, for example, you know, you go to any country and you meet the real people from that country. They have families, and they're all just trying to do good by their own people.
Absolutely.
And that everybody smiles. Everybody they're very welcoming. You know, like so there's this girl that she's like the youngest person to travel into the most amount of countries in the world, and she made a funny thing. She said, like, She's like, she went to, I think it was Afghanistan, and they went, yeah, they welcomed her in, and they said, everything's great, but make sure you watch out for the Iranians. So she went to Iran, and Iran was like, hey, everything's great, welcoming. They're like, make sure you watch out for the Pakistanis.
It's amazing how that stuff's been handed down over generations.
It's hilarious. Yeah. And when you go visit, and you're like, okay, none of that is actually true. But from externally, we're looking at it like, oh, the world is this thing, right? We're all just people just going through the experience. And we all don't know anything.
Yeah.
We all literally don't know anything.
We really don't, and it's not until we really begin to open our heart to really experience life from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, it's opening it up, being vulnerable. So that was one of the things that I had to learn the hard way. I think most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Is being vulnerable. I always had this idea and belief that vulnerability, particularly as a male, was really bad.
Of course.
You know, because most men, we're in business, we're out to strive, we're there to achieve. We don't really trust. You know, we may have camaraderie.
Yeah.
But
we're also taught to, like, bottle it up.
Yeah.
Push it down. Don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
What are we doing here, Kevin? Don't talk. Don't talk about this. You know? We're men. We just watch sports and throw balls back and forth.
Absolutely. And it's all part of it. It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
But vulnerability, I began to understand it.
Mm.
That when I became vulnerable, what I did was, I'm going to set the mic down here for a sec, is I went from this, seeing life, to this, more panoramically. Because I opened my heart. And what I have found in all of the things that have ever happened to me, and there have been many, many situations and many spiritual things, otherworldly things that really brought me to that space of understanding. That when I stand in a place that I don't fully know how to navigate, and I'm safe, don't get me wrong, I need to have some sense of boundaries and safety and so forth. But when I open to that place, it is always, without exception, more beautiful than what I could have imagined.
Mm.
And it's frightening.
Yep.
The first few times you do it, it's terrifying.
Yep.
But once you do it and you begin to trust that you're always guided, you're always protected. And like you said earlier, did I make mistakes? There are no mistakes, really, ultimately.
Yep.
It's a gift of learning.
Exactly. And it's going from the known to the unknown.
Yeah.
We're holding on to the known so much that it feels like I want to know where I'm going. I want to have a game plan. I want to have a thing.
Yeah.
And the unknown is that darkness, the thing we fear. Yet the unknown is the thing that has guided you the whole time. And if you actually submit to it and surrender to it, then it takes care of you much better than you could ever do. Because if you're going with just what you know, you're never going to get to that place which is that beautiful destination, or you're not going to go on that beautiful journey into the unknown.
So people begin to realize, they
Yeah.
said think outside the box.
Yeah.
I say there never was a box.
Exactly.
It was never there, and it's like all of a sudden people, and it's interesting because when I start sharing a lot of my experiences and things that have happened to me, I usually blow people's minds.
Yeah.
For days they're just like, oh my God, I am so confused.
Mm-hmm.
And my first response is, beautiful.
Perfect.
Because in that confusion, your ego doesn't have a direction. It stops and says, oh shit,
Yeah.
where am I going?
Yeah.
And if you can stay in that space long enough and you build that vulnerability and you begin to trust, little things start happening in the universe. People call it synchronicities. It's generally a word that people use a lot.
Yeah.
And when those synchronicities start happening, you see it's like, oh my God, there is something else here going on. I'll share a real quick story. You know, a lot of times, particularly for men in particular, they want to fight it.
Yeah.
It's, oh,
Because we just fight.
yeah.
You want to fight right now?
It's like, you know, women have a tendency just through their DNA and their makeup,
Yep.
that they have the ability to be more open. They give life. Okay, so with men, it's a little bit more challenging because we're kind of struggling a lot of times when we try and open this doorway. But when we do, and we have that first experience, I can tell you hundreds of stories where someone says, well, I've never really had a experience like that in my life. I said, really?
Mm-hmm.
So do me a favor, share a little bit about how you met your wife, or almost without exception. I don't really know how that happened, but it did. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. And they
Yep.
go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden it's like-
you've been experiencing it the whole time.
Yeah.
You just haven't cued into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. And one of the things I love the most are those people who really say, oh, none of this stuff exists.
Yeah.
I'm atheist. I don't believe in anything. And for me, it's phenomenal. I love those people because they're oftentimes someone who has the biggest experience.
Of course.
And again, this is not about looking for an experience.
Yep.
Because again, that's the ego, but it's about opening to it. Okay. And just allowing it and beginning for it to happen. And once it starts, like you said, you can't go back.
Yeah.
You've experienced it. You've understood it. You've touched it. You've tasted it. It's like, ooh, wow.
Yeah, and a lot of times you almost look back and then you start to cue into everything that has been happening, kind of like what you're saying, where you realize like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why things happen that way, or I was trying to push it in one direction, but things seem to kind of almost flow the other way, right? And that state of flow is one of the most beautiful things to discover, where you are just in that flow of things, and then things happen for you rather than to you, and you're constantly wowed by the synchronicities or even just who you become as a person, because the more you flow into it, the better things happen for you, and you start to become the version of you that you fall in love with, right? And these things, of course, and the male psyche is like falling in love with, I only fall in love with chicks, bro. I don't fall in love with myself. I'm a dude. I don't love dudes. Okay, I'm a man. But to that point, do you feel like it is because of culture? Do you think it's for men it's more culture, or do you think it's like something innate in us? I'm seeing more and more men actually open up. Part of
it is our DNA. I mean, we have a different chromosome than a female, but I know that historically, if you look at most of history, most of history was written by men. Yeah. Okay, so it's patriarchal.
Of course.
So obviously, take Catholicism for instance. Mary Magdalene or any kind of female presence always never had the same level of
stature.
Same thing in Hinduism.
Of course.
There's always that difference. And like, for me, growing up Catholic, you had to somehow lower the woman to make the man more important and more powerful. Well, it's interesting because when I studied the Vedas with my teacher, Swami Buddhananda, there's a beautiful thing, and I don't know exactly how to paraphrase it, but it was something that was said to the effect that God was saying, yes, I created all of this. Isn't this beautiful? This is wonderful. And there was a voice that said yes, and it was the feminine that said yes, and I created you.
Exactly.
So it's not one and I don't really believe it's one or the other, because I don't believe the soul, that animating energy, that creation has either.
Yeah, of course.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
We take on the characteristics of masculine, feminine in this world because it's based on duality. Mm-hmm. Hot, cold, light, dark, good, bad.
That's just how we perceive things.
Yeah. And ultimately, when we really sort of transcend that, are we open to a sense that there's more to this? That, wow, it's like, okay, I'm a male because I have genitalia. It tells me I'm a male.
Yeah.
She's female because of that. And it's like, but all of us have that masculine, feminine energy within us.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
And, this world is about duality, and that's the beauty. Because we think duality, some people think duality is a bad thing. Well, we came here to experience it because our initial essence, that part of us that came from Source, it saw what was happening. It's like, wow, this is vacation. I want to check that out.
This looks like it's a lot of fun. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, just to even know that you are here as this on this vacation, that this is this experience that we're going through, we hold on to this thing as like this is the end all be all for everything. And that's why that near-death experience is so enlightening for most people, because you realize, oh, this is not it. Yeah. This is just a step in the journey, and there's more out there. But even that piece, do you feel like you have to go through the trauma to experience it?
That's a thing that I've learned, and I'm still learning, that I believe it was part of my journey.
Yeah.
But I don't believe, and I always had in the back of my mind, my brother was a priest. I had priests in the family. My brother and I used to have conversations about this stuff for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that people have to go through that amount of suffering anymore. Okay. Because of those of us who did, that was our journey. Doesn't mean you won't suffer at times. It doesn't mean you won't fall into discomfort. But I believe there are enough of us that are helping people through this. And another thing is really it really hit home for me, and it wasn't too long ago. I've been on this journey for 30 plus years, and I've been to hell and back many times. And it was interesting because I do sound healing work, and I work with people, and I was getting a little frustrated. It's like, okay, I wanted creator, I wanted more people that were really ready to open up and really ready to, and then I had somebody come through and I shared that, and she looked at me and she said, kind of, how dare you? I said, what do you mean? She said, what about those people, this is the first exposure they've ever had, and you gave that to them?
Yeah.
And it really kind of like, wow. And it made me think about, I've been on this journey for 30 plus years, and it really made me think, what about these people that just got hit with it? Just like what's happening in the world now, with the C word and all of that. And, I've been on this journey a long time. These people just got this information in just less than a year.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine I've had this long of a time to assimilate all of these things, to integrate them.
Yep.
Or when somebody gets it and it's like, oh my God, how do I navigate this?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I believe that's part of my purpose for being here, is to help people make that transition.
Yeah, and almost guide them in the journey so they don't have to go down the harder road.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not saying that it's easy to have that where it's just put in front of your face and you just have to deal with it, but it kind of accelerates the path and at least makes it a little bit easier pill to swallow to kind of live that life. And that's one thing I love about Bali. This place is it's this beacon that just draws you in. And the world knows that Bali is this place to go get your spiritual tune-up and have an experience where it's going to change your life in some capacity.
It's one of the things I've learned about Bali after being here about 6 years. I kind of came here hesitantly. I mean, Spirit Creator said, you got to go now. I was like, what? Are you crazy? It's a whole long story, but...
Are you crazy? Come on, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
It's like when they say you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans. It's like, okay. But when where were we at? We were talking about when I came here.
Yeah, so Bali, what Bali does.
Yeah, what Bali does. And one of the things I've learned in the 6 years, and it really hit home when I first got here. Yeah. I connected with one of the kings of one of the 9 royal families here. They put me in their family compound, and I was in the bedroom, and I was lying down, just kind of going, okay, why am I here? And I looked up on the wall, and there were 2 paintings. There was this one black velvet painting, just like an Elvis painting, but it was a painting of a woman that was really very seductive. She's sort of kind of partially hanging out, and it was kind of like, okay, that was one painting. And next to it was another one, was this beautiful woman in white. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what does this mean? This woman's kind of slutty, this woman's kind of saintly, and it's like, why am I here? Yeah. So what I really began to ask myself over the next six years was, what is Bali about? And I really came to an understanding. 2 things. One is Bali is about finding balance, because they, as a religion or spirituality, they worship both the light and the dark. You want to call it good and evil, light and dark. Yeah. They give both credence. Okay, and it's one of the things I learned from my near-death experience was, after I came out of the light in a state of samadhi, I went into a state of darkness and wanted to commit suicide for a year. Yep. And I began to understand and put all of these experiences together here in Bali, and it's about balance. How can you truly know in a human existence what the light is like without having the darkness?
Exactly.
Okay, the shadow.
Yep.
And once you see both of those together, you begin to see a wholeness. They both exist. Yeah. And then what happens is you generally start moving into seeing the beauty in the world.
Exactly.
Both. And then you get to really choose. Yeah. Because before, you probably weren't choosing. You were choosing based upon, psychological messaging, things that have happened to you. But when it becomes aware, you then begin to make choices. And that's the key difference. So balance. Yeah,
and you're not just trying to find what you see as the light. You're not trying to eliminate everything that's dark. So that I had a similar experience.
That's exhausting.
Yeah, it's like let me get rid of the dark. It's like there is no light without the dark. No. But for me, it was the same thing where I came here and I had traumas in my life, and I looked at them as I was kind of holding on to them. Sure. I had a lot of childhood abuse. I was molested as a child, and I just took that as this is the thing that hurt me, and it's the dark parts, and I kind of took it as the thing to avoid, and I'd almost scratched over it in my mind. But as I did the work here, it showed me, wait, that part is one of the pivotal pieces of who you are today.
You bet.
The beauty of my existence and who I am as a person, which I love me. I'm probably more in love with me than anybody. Okay, I'm sorry. But that also came out of the darker experiences I've had.
Sure.
And then it almost made them something that I cherish in a way, where I look at it as if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be the person who I am today, and I wouldn't be able to spread the light the way that I do.
Absolutely.
Right. And it took a lot of kind of mental shift, even saying this and getting to this point where I can share these things. I really had to get them out of me and accept them as a part of who I am. Yeah. Obviously, it's also put me on a mission of making sure that we create a world where those kind of things don't happen. But then as I've kind of grown into myself, I've realized I gotta love all parts of me. There's nothing that happens by coincidence.
Yeah, when you look at creation, and if you look at Creator's point of view, first time I ever entered into the frequency of love, it's a story around that. But when I entered into it, I realized what love is on an energetic level, and it blew my mind. I was in primal fear. It's like, holy shit, I don't know how to navigate this.
Yeah.
Because it has no boundaries. It doesn't wish to scream out to the world. It simply wants to meet itself, that energy, that frequency of love. And some of the most profound teaching and learnings that I have integrated were from that shadow, from that darkness, that really helped me to see its wholeness. Yeah, like you're saying. And, that's what I do for work now as well, is I help people look at those traumas, to reframe them, to see them from a different perspective. Because ultimately, what happened to us, oftentimes we take it on as our own trauma. It's, something we're not worthy enough, we don't deserve it, abandonment, all of these issues.
Yep.
But ultimately, where it came from were those from people we loved, simply repeating their pattern.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you come to that point of understanding, which you've come to, is they were telling me more about them than they were me.
Yep.
And now it opens me to a whole new perspective where it's like, oh, that's not really my shit, my stuff. It was theirs.
Yeah.
What do I do with this?
Yeah.
And it's really powerful.
In that moment, it's powerful to think that you're not perpetuating their shit.
Yeah.
You're actually putting kind of the end stop to what's been perpetuated down the lines.
Yeah, that's what we call in the Native American, in the tradition, it's called Metakuya Oyasin. Okay. It simply means, I call out to all of my relations before me and all who shall come after me. I end this now.
Yeah.
Be with me.
Yeah.
To release it, because when I've seen this happen to people energetically, you can literally, and even to myself, you can literally see that energy just dissipating from that individual.
Yeah.
And you literally release all those who have come after you, who have suffered. Okay, so it's really powerful, and it can happen at any moment.
Yeah, and we think that we're just living this life for ourselves, but what we do and what we are kind of developing in ourselves has a generational effect. That's a great little message that came from a hypnosis that I did, and they mentioned, like, stop looking at things from just your little window.
Yeah.
This life that you call your life is just a tiny sliver of a window. The decisions you make today, the change you leave in this world, the legacy you leave, will have rippling effects for the infinity of time.
Sure.
And that piece, I think, sometimes gets lost, where we start to look at things in a very granular way, and like me, and I want things for me, right? It's like you're part of a much bigger picture. You're almost that speck of dust that creates the entire earth, and without you, the earth wouldn't exist, yet you almost don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, the entire, like they keep telling us, that the entire universe is contained in each one of our cells.
Yeah.
And we're connected to everything and all things. And when I shared earlier, I'd had an experience where I actually entered into the frequency of love.
Yep.
It was during a session with a man and a woman doing some techniques and so forth, and it was just like I was blown wide open. And it was that point that I realized it's all love, no matter what happens.
Yep.
There is no right or wrong, good or bad. And because Creator just says, and what I realized in that moment was, creation godliness said, go experience. You are the one that gives it value. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I love you regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you want to come home, come home.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's not what happens, it's how you take it.
Yeah,
It's how you see it.
Yeah, it's how you see it.
Yeah.
And once you see it, and once you cathartic it or release it, and open to that new space, shifts your whole world.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you said, you can't go back.
Yeah. And that shift is, I think everybody needs it. So if you're not confused by now, and you're like, what are they talking about? Welcome. This is exactly what you can experience all the time. So that's I guess what we're talking about today. We could go on for days and days, and we're gonna. So
Sure.
hopefully you'll tune in next time for next episode of, I don't know. Thank you so much for joining us. Much love to you all.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care.